What is up, everyone? A tournament happened in Japan recently called the Aichi Champions League about 10 days ago, which had about half of the Twilight Masquerade cards that we'll be getting. So today I wanted to look at some of the standard deck lists from the decks that have been out. Obviously, about only half are revealed. Things like Dragapult EX um, that could be impactful to the metagame have not made their way fully into the Japanese metagame. The first Champions League with that will be coming up here in May. And we will take a look at that hopefully on the channel. Hopefully I'll be able to restream it. Got a couple obligations that weekend, so I got to make sure I can handle everything all at once. But that being said, I wanted to look at the top 16 lists, or as many of the top 16 lists as I can, to look at some of the metagame trends. And I thought it was a lot of fun that they also still do expanded. So I wanted to show off some of the expanded lists for you enthusiasts out there, so you guys can skip ahead to that if you're an expanded player or someone who has nostalgia that maybe expanded is still a salvageable format. Maybe it's something that we can still play, and I'll show you guys why it's just completely unplayable. But my name is Rahul Reddy, and today we're going to be looking at some of the new meta changes with some of the newer cards coming out. So as you can see already by the results, there was 3 Charizard in the top 4. So that was one thing that you guys might not enjoy that has not changed, I guess. And you can see here, the champion Charizard list is pretty similar to what we've been playing for a little bit. It's got the 4-1-3 Charizard line, 2-2 Pidgeot, 1-1 Bib, Radzard, Rotom Lumineon, Manaphy. Everything is pretty stable across the board, supporter-wise, but the big change here is that it is playing a copy of Unfair Stamp. Now, Unfair Stamp says when a prize card has been taken last turn from your opponent, you both shuffle your hands into the deck, and you draw 5, they draw 2. So you can basically gut your opponent's resources starting as early as turn 2. Now, an Unfair Stamp that you can pull off of an Arven, basically, you can go like Arven, get your Pidgeot set up, Pidgeot for Unfair Stamp as soon as your opponent's taken a prize card. And let's say this list played something like Devo as well. Unfair Stamp Devo would be so crippling for any Charizard Mirror match or any Baxcalibur deck or anything. Just imagine having to start the game with only 2 cards, basically after taking your first knockout. So it's going to introduce a new layer of how to play the game and play it slower, because if you don't, you're going to get punished. The second place list was something very similar as well. You can see this list does not have the Barrel, but instead has 2 Rotom for setup purposes for Arven, a full grip of that. And you see the Devo in this list, and as well as the Hero's Cape. This one is opting to play the Hero's Cape over Unfair Stamp or Prime Catcher or Max Belt, simply to bolster a bigger Charizard in matchups like Pow, maybe Mirror, stuff like that, and Lugia. So a Hero's Keep did make it to the finals of the Champions League. Keep in mind, I think it's best of 1 all the way through the tournament for a Champions League. So anything could have happened, and players are allowed to switch decks from day 1 to day 2. So I think every record with 7-2 record or better is allowed to advance to the second day. And once you're in the second day, you're allowed to switch decks, which does mean that some of these lists might be a little bit weirder than previously imagined, because people might be metagaming for each other. You might know exactly who you're going to hit at a certain record, and that might change what deck you might play. In third place, we had Gardevoir, a deck that everyone thought was dead for quite a while, but you can see here it's well and alive with 2 Drifloon, the Screamtail, you have the Flutter, and the Klefki, kind of just using those tools to full effect. But rather than using Hero's Cape now, this list also is choosing to play a copy of Unfair Stamp to basically just bolster another big attacker here. And you also have Damage Pump to basically just move damage off of something potentially to just build up a bigger attacker without Gardevoir. Maybe you just preemptively set up your board and Toro up a Gardevoir, so you have Damage Pump late game to just move some damage around here. So it's a very cute card. But again, Unfair Stamp being as broken as it is means that now it's like turn 2, you have your Curlias to set up your board while you put your opponent to 2 cards, and it just makes it really hard for them to play the game once again. In fourth, we had another Charizard list. This one looking a lot more similar to the first place list, with the Barrel, 2 Rotom, no Lumineon. So basically just choosing to use more of the charge as opposed to setting up Lumineon or having an option for that. 3 Nestball and 3 Pavin, which is pretty good for consistency. You have the Unfair Stamp also making its way into this list. So 3 of the top 4 lists did play Unfair Stamp. That's something to note. Temple of Sinnoh here to deal with the Mist, but no Devo or anything. So just Sinnoh, I guess, to deal with Mist and Gift, I guess, energy more than anything. And Lugia, so this list seems to be more concerned about Lugia than potentially the Mist energy from a different deck, if you have Devo, for example. And so in top 8, then we have the first iteration of Lost Box here, and we have a newcomer to the fray, Blood Moon Ursaluna. I don't know if you guys know what this guy does, but it's functionally Radiant Charizard, Blood Moon Ursaluna EX for 260 HP has an ability called Veteran's Technique. This Pokemon's Blood Moon attack costs 1 less colors for each prize card your opponent's taken. 5 colorless, Blood Moon 240. During this next turn, your Pokemon can't attack. So basically, functionally, it acts as a Radiant Charizard at the end of the game. But imagine having Radiant Charizard and Radiant Greninja in the same deck, basically. That's kind of what like Lost Box is going to become, where now you have access to Radiant Greninja, and you also get Radiant Charizard. And the downside of not having the access to both means you can play like a weird Sablezard style deck, or you can play like OG Lost Box. Like this has just got your hands, your Moon, your Raikou, all your attackers that you could possibly want, and it's like a very cut and dry, staple, standard Lost Box list with a ton of different attackers. Just missing a Mew EX potentially for some shenanigans, but otherwise it's like as standard gets, I think. And then we had Giratina also making its way into the top 8 here. This one playing a copy of Unfair Stamp as well. I think Giratina is one of the few decks that can abuse it pretty hard in the early game if you can find it. Early game Unfair Stamp into late game Roxanne puts your opponent on a weird timer that they can't really play around, especially when you're potentially Abyss Seeking yourself, getting rid of some of these worst cards in your deck. And then Blood Moon Ursaluna also is a great mid to late game attacker that can just do a ton of damage. 240 is like not a laughable amount, and 260 HP is very difficult to deal with as well. So you can kind of put a ton of pressure on your opponents with this cute guy, and then you have Jet Energies to reset it, obviously, or do what you want, similar to how Radzard would have been pretty decent, honestly, in a deck like this if it wasn't for the typing, and that Greninja is just absolutely broken. Next up in the top 8, we had an Arctina list making its way there. In Japan, it always seems like an Arceus deck will make its deck or appearance in a top 8 just because of how consistent its nature is in a best of one setting. And this list isn't anything special. There's just a 3-2 Bibarel line, a Gardenia's Vigor in the list to potentially get something up and running. You see Max Belt, which makes a lot of sense for one-shotting Charizard potentially. You have Iron Leaves and Radiant Gardevoir. Only 2 copies of Judge, which is a little bit interesting because I think that Arceus decks are like a lot more prone to just spamming Judge in the current format, or like that's the identity they've taken across time. I just feel like this is not the identity of a typical list. A lot of one-of supporters, like 1 Research, 1 Area, 1 Turo. Like I think the Turo and Area are fine, but like the 1 Research is a little bit weird to me. Like why not just play another Judge? 1 Aroma is fine. I think it's like a blanket card that gets you anything you could want in the deck. It's like another way to get another Ultra Ball card. Like so potentially if you get Tails, you get the Leaves, which makes a lot of sense to me. I like that. I like that quite a bit actually. 6 and a 3 split. A little bit harsh on the Psychics, but I do think the grasses are very important for the Leaves. So I do like that. We don't have the 8th place players deck list, which I think is probably why it's not on Limitless just yet from Robin's perspective. But then in 9th, we have a new archetype, Iron Treads. Iron Treads is basically just a future guy that says as long as it's in the active, Pokemon with rule box have no abilities except any future Pokemon. So basically it's Path to the Peak for anything that's not future. And this attack is just lightning and double colors, 140, and move an energy from this to your bench. So this list is just playing 4 Thorns. You're just going to have Thorns, you're going to have Boss, you're going to have Arven, Iono, Judge, Airy. Like look at this, there's 3 Airy, 4 Judge. Like you're just going to be spamming these early game, getting into your opponent's resources while they're stuck not being able to use the rule box cards. You have Gears to find your cards, 4 Hammer to get rid of their stuff, Techno Radars that you can get off Arven to get more Iron Thorns into play. Basically just have to have energies in your hand to play the game. Why is there Cologne in this? What does Cologne do for this? Like Manaphy, I guess? I don't know. What does Cologne actually stop? Doesn't stop block. I guess Mimikyu, just 2 Cologne for Mimikyu is like the only thing I can think of, because you don't have another answer to hit into Mimikyu, so maybe you just... But if a deck can cycle 3 Mimikyus, you just lose, I guess, which is fair, honestly. You have Calamitous Wasteland, just making higher retreat costs for stuff, so you can just stick stuff in the active, too, if you just want to beat it up. You have TM Devo to beat stuff like Zard, potentially, where you can go hit a Zard. They can't use Zard effectively. Maybe you boss up the Pidgeot early, kill it with Bolt Cyclone, and move from there. You have TM Turbo Energize, which you can get off an early Arven, which searches your deck and gets 2 basic attaches to a bench. So you basically can go first Arven into TM Turbo Energize, Techno Radar for a Thorns, 2 Thorns, Turbo Energize to a Thorns, next Arven into Future Booster Capsule plus an item that you might need, which is really good because I think TM Turbo Energize is like a pretty decent card. But this is just like a really boring way to play Pokemon, and I think like quad anything is like kind of boring. So we'll see if this deck is actually real or is it just like a cheese best of one deck. And then another top 16 list. This one looking a lot more similar to the one that a lot of players have been playing. 2nd place, Nico Galas with this list over, or something very similar to this in um, Brazil, with the Blood Moon Ursa Luna, Mew EX, Spirit 2 making its way into the deck as well, just to stop the early setup of some decks. 2 Roxanne, no copies of Boss's Orders, but 1 copy of Countercatcher, opting to go this route as opposed to playing the boss because he does have the bundle and no access to Palpad. So if there was a Palpad, maybe that route would change a little bit, play boss, but this list is pretty cut and dry standard, I think, especially adding the Blood Moon Ursa Luna as a late game hitter. And then 11th, we had another Lost Box iteration, but this one is also playing a copy of the Iron Thorns. So maybe in the early game, or even like mid game, you can go into the Thorns, do 140. 3 lightning attackers means we put a lot of pressure on decks like that include Pidgeot, but also Charizard is still a pretty tremendous problem as a card, because once Charizard hits the board, we don't have a great way to one-shot it with this list, so I don't really like this list in particular, because there's no Roaring Moon. There's no way to deal with the Charizard. The Charizard, if it gets onto the board, it's going to just take 4 prizes probably by itself before you get to play the game. And with Airy and Iono, you're going to have a worse hand across the board. Blocklax did make its way into top 16 as well here. This list is pretty standard, I think. Nothing special about it. There's 2 Rotoms, 2 Ericas, 2 MF, 2 Giacomo, 2 Boss, 2 Iono, 3 Airy, 3 Penny, blah, blah, blah. Like the whole shebang is like pretty standard, I think, across the board. This is not the Control Pidgeot version, so everything in here is just basically making sure we can continue to chain these Snorlaxes and lock our opponent out of the game potentially. Very little gameplay aspect to this version compared to something like the Pidgeot version. So still there, and still Control is very much alive, just looks like it's dwindling compared to last time that we saw a Champions League in Japan. In top 16, we also did see a Lugia make its way into Top Cut, and this one opting to play a copy of Blood Moon Ursa Luna as well with the Veteran's Technique. It's just a fine attacker late game, and if you open it or something, you can just power it up with Archeops in this scenario, and you have Jets as well to work around that. You have a Flutter Mane to just, I guess, cheese out some Lost Box decks potentially, which I guess it probably didn't work in this situation. There's an Rezu in here to get 3 Rule Box non-evolution Pokemon, so you probably grab 2 Archeops and a Chinchino. It's like you play a Rezu or Jacques, because Jacques can get you Lugia V-Star, however, a Rezu can get you 1 extra card. So it's like a pick your poison type of deal. And I do think like both have merit in how you want to play the game. Like obviously Jacques just gets you maybe like an Archeops and the V-Star that you might need to play the game, versus a Rezu getting you like double Archeops, and if you have a Chinchino ready to go, you can just load up. This is also playing Survival Cast, which is one of the new A specs. If this Pokemon is attached to its full HP and would be knocked out by damage, it's 10 HP remaining. So you can maybe put Survival Cast on like a Chinchino and just make this guy really beefy, or like put it onto a Mew or something. And like if you could put it on Chinchino, maybe like with 4 energies or 5 energies, maybe this Chinchino can take 4 prizes, like 1 Chinchino, and that could just be really good. But every deck could be playing Vacuum, which makes Survival Cast a little bit weaker, so we'll see if that actually does anything. Then we have another Blocklax in the top 16. This one a little bit more varied in cards. It's got Blood Moon Ursa Luna, got Psychics to be attacking with Mimikyu. This one has an attacking game plan, even if it doesn't want to go into that game plan, and has more of a width of cards. And then finally, in the top 16, we have a Goldengo Palkia deck. A little bit interesting that it's our first sighting of Goldengo, but you can see that Goldengo nearly has not been doing as well. Only 3 Irida is kind of ridiculous to me. This is like a deck that I feel like you need the 4 Irida, but it's got 3. Like this guy's running the rule of 3s, like where it's like 3 Ultra, 3 Buddy, 3 Vessel, 3 Shoes, only 2 Pokestop. So cuts were made somewhere to make space for all these like cards. Like I think the Shoes is like the 3 Shoes are basically coming from like the Irida Ultra Ball like Poffin slot basically. But this list looks pretty consistent if you're a Goldengo enjoyer. Maybe this is the deck for you. No Cryptos, which is really interesting to me because you have both Greninja and you have coin bonus. So no Cryptomaniacs or Cyphermaniacs deciphering, code breaking, whatever the card is called now. In this list is a little bit weird to me, but this is just an off-the-wall meta deck anyway, and we don't have 16th place. So that's the end of the standard portion. If you guys are here for that, if you are, please like and subscribe on your way out. But let's go to the expanded portion, because some of these decks are wild. The Champions list is, for those of you who don't know, expanded. It's a format that runs from Black and White to now. We haven't had a tournament in TPCI's format since 2020, probably. Season that got canned because of COVID. So it's been 4 years since we've had an expanded tournament. There's been a couple of bands that hit the ban list since then, but none for us because we haven't played it, and only Japan has really played it. But Japan is continuing to play it, which is something ridiculous. So this is the winning list that focused on a card called Bunnelby that has the Barrage Omega trait, which lets you do an attack twice per turn. You have Burrow, which discards a top card, and Rototiller, which shuffles a card back in. But that's not why we're playing it. We're using it with TM Evo. So TM Evo gets attached. We put some Audishes into play. We can make them into Glooms, and we can make them into Item Lock Vileplume immediately. And once Item Lock Vileplume is established, or we can make Pidgeot, like we can get an Oddish into play, we can get a Pidgey into play, and then we can go TM Evo into Pidgeotto and Gloom, and then TM Evo once again into Pidgeot and Vileplume. And now you have no way to gust and lock up this Vileplume. You have no way to gust and do anything because this Pidgeot will get you one card every turn that you need. You have Vileplume GX as well, which can heal and do a bunch of damage if you need to. Like this is an attacking option, and Allergic Explosion is really good to just lock an opponent's attacker for a singular turn while you're figuring out how to continue your lock. Draft Rig is really good as well because you can just start putting cards from the discard pile into Lost Zone that your opponent might need to recover and use resources to play the game. You have Starfall Jirachi, which also does 10 to discard damage or energy, special energy, and prevent all attacks. Don't know why this is in here, but I guess Firefighter Pikachu is just a cute card that discards a card from the active, a fire energy. So I think this is like a funny, cute card that the player is choosing to play. But then you have like Guzma and Hala, which effectively is your better version of Arven because this now gets you your tool card, meaning you can go get the Evolution TM, and then you can go get Capture Energy, which in then turn either gets you the Bunnelby or one of these pieces that you might need, and then you can start building up your board, which then you get off the 4 tag calls that exist in the deck. Faba gets rid of special energies in the stadiums that your opponent might have, or tools, just consistently pulling off their resources. Flare Grunt getting rid of whatever they can attach. Plumeria getting the energy. Skull Grunt taking their energies. Like, we're just basically gutting our opponent of all their energies, and if they don't do anything and just play like a slow and like, let's try to say a controlled game to like find their resources, we're just going to be burrowing 2 cards off the top of their deck every single turn. Just be like, okay, attach, my energy's already here, burrow 2 cards, go. Okay, cool, sick. Back to me, get rid of 2 more cards. And most of the recovery in the format is based on item recovery. Like, a lot of the recovery is item-based recovery. So a deck like this is like pretty cheeky. You have the Neo Upper Energy to potentially attack with something like Vileplume. This is probably the A-spec of choice in this kind of deck, just because every other A-spec is either a tool or an item, and both of those don't really have it. Like, a tool could make sense in this, but none of the items make any sense because you're trying to get the turn 1 item lock up and running, and once the item lock is up and running, you don't also get access to items. Like, no one can use items. Second place, we had Alolan Raichu. Alolan Raichu says, discarding number of lightning energy from this Pokemon, then for each energy you discarded, choose one of your opponent's Pokemon and do 30 damage to it. So basically, you're trying to spam, like, knock out their whole board in one turn. So basically, you're going to go into Electro GX, blow it up, attach 5 energy cards to your board, do it all on, like, you're going to go turn 1 into Gengar Mimikyu, Horror House, stop your opponent from playing any extra cards from their hand. So they're whatever they're stuck on board is stuck on board. Like, their board is now locked. You also have Whisper for the ball attack that puts your opponent in a position where they can't play any items or trainer cards at all. Sorry. If you go second, have to use Whisper. So you can go Whisper while setting up your board with like Dedenes and stuff, and get your Voltorbs into play. Now your opponent can't Guzma, your opponent can't Gust. Whatever's in the active is stuck in the active, and then you just blow up your whole board. Like, you basically just give up 4 prize cards with Electrode by going extra Energy Bomb. Put 10 energy onto your board. You're now playing from behind. You have Reversal Energy, which attaches 3 of any energy typing to this Raichu. So let's say you have all 4 Reversal in the discard. That's 12 energies. Let's say you have all 4 counters in the discard. That's 20, and then you can go up to 24 if you need to with Unit. And then you have Telescopic Sight, which snipes anything to bench for plus 30 for Vs and GXs. So if they're playing like Crobats or Dedenes, which almost every list will be playing in the expanded format that has a turbo aspect, you just basically like blow up their entire board with like Battle Compressor. Like, you're going to Battle Compressor, put all your energies into the discard. And then you're just going to go into like Gengar Mimikyu, use Unit Energy, lock them while you set up your board. You're going to go Dedenne, Crobat, like Squawk, all in one turn with Skyfield. Basically see your entire deck in one turn with all of these cards. And then after a Horror House, if you have the second Dedenne, if you have the second Crobat, see the rest of your deck, go into your 1 Raichu, If you prize both Pikachu and Ditto, it's a little bit unfortunate, but you do have Heavy Ball, so you have a bunch of outs to get it out. And you have Computer Search as well to dig. And then you just basically just go Electro Rain, ping, 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 ping. Oh, that's crazy. Like, my one reversal does 120 damage now onto one thing. Oh, that's times 4. I do 480 damage on your board. You have 480 damage worth of things that can soak my attacks after I've put you in a position where you can't play any cards from your hand with Horror House, or in a position where I can Whisper you. No, you don't. That's crazy. Thanks for playing. Like, think about how insane this is, where you're just trying to play Pokemon and you don't get to play Pokemon. Third place was once again the Bunnelby Lock deck. It doesn't look like it's anything special compared to the other list. It looks almost identical, actually. So maybe these two players did collaborate and work together on this list. Shows you how powerful Item Lock is in Expanded. It always has been. For those of you who played Expanded, you know how insanely powerful it's always been. And then you had Iron Thorns Vikavolt. Vikavolt is Item Lock, so you go into Ability Lock to start the game with Iron Thorns, and then once you are ready to go into Item Lock, you can go into Vikavolt, start Item Locking your opponent while you're using Garbotoxin into play. So they have no abilities once again, and this is again playing like a little bit of a slow, controlled game. Once again with Luxray V to Fang snipe cards out of their hand, to Lucario Full Metal Wall. We take 30 less potentially, but that's not really what we need. We want to get the 2 energies in to discard all the energies off of a big attacker that they're potentially building up. Guzmahala, Cheryl as cards. Like, the Cheryl is just going to basically... Wait, it's only evolution Pokemon, right? Yeah, so we're just healing our Garbodors, I guess. Interesting. I guess just for Garbodor? Just to heal Garbodor? I don't... That one is a little bit more curious to me than another healing choice potentially that you could be playing, like Acerola maybe, or AZ. I don't know. Maybe just Cheryl's just better. Who knows? I don't know. This is a weird list. Cynthia, Caitlyn, more tag supporters. Like, any tag team supporters were absolutely broken in the expanded format. You have Lusamine to recycle stuff. You have Faba once again, and Tropical Beach. So early game you can go Iron Thorns in the active. Just stick it there as your path to the peak answer. Basically, it's just a path. And then you beach and just draw cards while you set up your board. And then you move into an Item Lock, Ability Lock, and then they'll start taking cards out of their hand. You have Enhanced Hammer. You have Speed to draw cards. You have DTE to use with any of our attackers. You have Capture to just find more pieces. Basically another pseudo lock strategy. This one's significantly worse than the other ones, but this still does get to attack and rip cards out of your opponent's hand as you're playing the game. Then in top 8, we had Regidrago with Garbodor as well. Regidrago being a card they can use for 2 grass and a fire. Any dragon-type Pokemon's attacking your discard, and Legacy Starlight to discard top 7, put 2 cards there. But in Expanded, we have this really cool card called Double Dragon Energy, which is any 2 energy cards attached to 1 dragon-type Pokemon. So basically, this plus an attach lets you start going ham with Drago. So here's our attackers. Dialga, you have Shred, probably in there for Shred more than anything. But if we get to our GX attack, because you get a V-Star and you get a GX now, think about how crazy that is. You get 2 once per game effects in the same game. Is that okay? Probably not. Thanks, Pokemon. Timeless lets you skip a turn if you can get to that point in time. Or maybe you can just copy it. You can just skip a turn for Timeless if you need to. With Apex, you can go Apex Dragon, Timeless, 150, skip a turn, back to me, let's go again. With Muscle Band, you can hit 170 with Timeless, which means you can one-shot things like Dedenne and Lele on the bench, and Squawk, not Crobat, but everything else is fine. You have Goodra as well for Rolling Iron to just keep making your guys bigger and bigger. Like, if you can Rolling Iron with one Drago, the other Drago has to be targeted. If that happens, your first Drago stays alive, and it's just a beat stick. You have Noivern GX that says they can't play item cards if you're having a slower start or you want to slow your opponent down. Then Sonic Volume for any special energy, and then you have Boom Burst, I guess, as well, if you want to do something with that at the end of the game. Then you have Noivern EX, which just locks out any basics, and then you can use Dominating Echo if you get this up early enough, which then means they can't play any special energy from their hand. And a lot of, I don't know if you've noticed, but almost every deck in this format plays a ton of special energy. So, yeah. And then you have Mega Rayquaza, which does 300, just straight 300, and discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. So that's pretty insane that you just need to be like, hey, sick, man, 300 with Mega Rayquaza. You have a 1/1 Garbodor line just to set that up and have an item lock or ability lock going at some point once you're rolling to make your opponent slow down. Locking something in Expanded and not letting your opponent play Pokemon just seems like the name of the game. That being said, there are only 2 Battle Compressor, which is a little bit concerning to me, but you do have 4 Mysterious Treasure to put the Dragon types in your hand and then have more discard fodder. across the board, so maybe that's better. I don't know, dude. I just feel like a 3-3 split at least. Like, I think Battle Compressor is so broken when, like, a lot of the supporters you're going to be playing are going to come out of your discard. And this list only has 6 supporters and 1 Lele, and only 1, 2, 3 of them are draw. Um, so if you get item locked early, this list could really, really struggle to play the game, especially because Raihan's your only way to accelerate an extra energy on its board. So this deck, compared to the other decks, requires at least 1 turn of energy attachment, which some of the other decks we've seen, like the Buttleby deck, the Raichu deck, like doesn't really need that turn of setup. Once again, on the Drago list, this one's having a Dawnwing Necrozma as well to have as a free retreater, it looks like, with the invasion to keep resetting and playing around that option. If you need to, you have the Wobbuffet as well in the early game, the Gardenias to set up your board a little bit more. So this is a card that I think makes a lot of sense in Expanded. You can always Gardenias and you can set up your board. You have Viridian Forest to find the card as well, the exact energy you need. Yeah, another cool concept of a beat stick expanded deck. And then in 7th, we had a fire deck. So we had Gouging Fire, which does 260 with Blaze Blitz, but then you pair that up with Volcanion, which Steam Up allows you to power up your fire type Pokemon with discarding a basic fire from your hand to do 30 more damage. So with 2 Volcanions, you can now bolster your attack up to 320 with Blaze Blitz. Or you can do Delphox Magical Fire 180 to the active and 120 to a bench. Or now Radzard does up to 310 as well if you have 2 Volcanions. And so with Welder attaching from your hand, you can just power up your board pretty quickly, draw a bunch of cards. You have Lysander Prism to be cheesy, I guess. I don't really like that card. Does whatever. But you have, like, you're basically just playing like a shell of a, let's play like Firebox without a 3-prizer in play, because Reshiram and Charizard used to be that slot, but now you don't want a 3-prizer in play. You also have Adventure Bag to get 2 tools. So you can go get Ancient Booster Capsule, make your Gouging Fire really big, Floatstone, keep moving some pieces around, Sealstone for Delphox, or Crobat. I do think that maybe a copy of Blacksmith or 2 would be really good in here, just because Blacksmith and Welder kind of fulfill similar purposes, and Welder requires you to have the energies in hand. But mid to late game, you're gonna, I guess you have Crystal for late game, Fire Flint for early game, and you have Trainer's Mail to keep finding cards in your deck. But the problem is maybe you run out of hand size at some point, like resources. But I guess with Dedenne and Crobat, you're just kind of filling your hand over and over again, and you just need to find a couple of these pieces. So this is a very super straightforward list. Like, there is no cute gimmicks to it, and I like this quite a bit. Lugia, this one is the deck that I've actually seen before. Lugia now can go kind of crazy because you have Wally. You can get a turn 1. You can get a turn 1 Lugia into play with Battle Compressor, putting Archeops into the discard. And with a turn 1 Lugia plus Archeops, you can accelerate double Dragon Energies onto your board to use Chaotic Order to turn all of your prizes face up, take 2 prize cards. This list doesn't have the Garchomp Giratina, but the Garchomp Giratina, I think, is like the purpose of the deck, where you basically just go into the Garchomp Giratina and you discard 2 things off the board. Like, that's what it, I think that's what it does, right? Like, Garchomp Giratina Tag Team, I think that's exactly what it does, right? Like, you, it's a very tiny image. I want the big image. One of these images will work. Hello? Yeah, GG end. Discard one of your opponent's Pokemon, all cards. If you have 3 extra, you discard 2. So basically, you're just going like, I'm going to go turn 1. I'm going to pop off on the board. I'm going to discard 2 dudes off your board, and you have to play from that position, which I think a lot of decks can't play from that position. But obviously, I think this deck has a little bit of a weaker setup ceiling because you have to go second. You have to find your 1 Wally. This list is like super fragile, it looks like, compared to the other ones, because other Lugia lists I've seen play like multiple Wallies, like fully lean into that strategy. This one seems like it's just like an attacking Lugia with some options, but I don't know if that's good at that point. In 9th, we have Mew. We have expanded DTE Mew. So you get Path to the Peak back in your format. You have your Fusion Strike cards. You have Seismitoad to early game Quaking Punch if you need to. Can't copy that with Mew. They have to actually, like, you have to actually Quaking Punch. But you can Wally turn 1 now and use Cross Fusion Strike for all you Mew enjoyers out there. That's got to be like a good feeling that you can just go into turn 1 Wally, get the board running. You have VIP Pass to find all your pieces still. Plus you have Quick Balls. Plus you have Ultra Balls. Plus you have like Unfair Stamp in this list as well, which is crazy. So like turn 2, you can Unfair Stamp something. You have Muscle Band, which is like a plus 20 guaranteed everywhere. You have your Power Tablets. Expanded, you just see a lot more cards. Surprising that this list is not playing like a Dedenne or something of that nature. But overall, I think this just looks like someone took Mew, added a couple expanded cards, and called it a day. And then once again, you have another Quad Thorns Wobbuffet deck where you just have two different things that stop abilities in the active. You just play Chaotic Swell to balance other stadiums, play a weird control game with Plumeria, Faba, Lucimeans to loop them, Flare Grunt, Handiwork to mill their cards, Palace Book, draw 3 cards, your turn ends. So I guess 4 Palace Books, MF Sisters, Grunt, Airy, Sydney, just the things that will rip resources out of your opponent's hands, and then just keep not letting them play the game while you just keep smacking for either Bolt Cyclone or you keep smacking for either Psychic Assault. Like basically, like Psychic Assault will stack up over time. Bolt Cyclone will start stacking up immediately. Wob probably the better opener and expanded because a lot of decks just can't play into Wob. Because now you can't use your Lele, you can't use your Shaman, or as you can use Lele. Sorry, I'm lying to you. You can use Lele, but you can't use Shaman, you can't use Dedenne, you can't use Crobat. Even the Bottleby deck, that even if you get your Vileplume up and running, that's crazy. You still don't get to use the Vileplume item lock. Like, you just wasted a whole turn to get your board set up. You can't use your Pidgeot. Like, this could be like Wob is the silent killer of expanded always. Another Lugia list. This one is just amazing Lugia with prisms and stuff, but this is playing Iron Hands. So this is like more of a Lugia that you guys are used to playing. Just weird. Just weird because you use special charge, but like, do you ever get time to use all these cards? Like, do you ever get time to recycle your Yveltal or your Raikou? Like, why are there so few attackers in these Lugia lists when you have so many ways to use, like, reuse your special energy? That's what I'm so confused by. Like, why are we only have like 2 attackers or 3 attackers in here? Like, what do we do if they're prized? I guess we have Heavy Ball, but what do we do when they get knocked out? We're not recovering these guys. Like, these brothers are not coming back. Like, once Raikou and Yveltal are gone and hands are gone, I just don't think we have a way to win the game. Like, what do we do from there? So that's my concern. Looks like 12th was also another Raichu, probably Electrode build. And then 13th we had another Draco aggressive build. This one using a Mega Charizard that discards the top 5 cards of your deck over the Mega Rayquaza. So the 2 Mega Evolutions coming in clutch with the ton of damage. The overall, like impossible text to use regularly. Like, you're never using the Mega Rayquaza and you're never using this Mega Charizard in like a regular game of Pokemon. But the expanded format makes the our wildest dreams come true. So this is the kind of recap of how expanded looks. Basically, you're item locking or ability locking or locking someone out of something and making their life completely miserable. And if you enjoy doing that, play the expanded format. I might build one of these Vileplume decks just to have, like, to shuffle up my desk or something. This looks pretty fun, honestly, I'm not going to lie, but I would never play this in a tournament. It just looks like miserable to play in a tournament setting. And then the standard format, Unfair Stamp good, Blood Moon Ursaluna good. We'll see if the rest of the cards are good, but thank you for watching. I know this is a longer drawn out video. I wanted to kind of cover both. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll catch up later.